Thank you for joining me for a roundup your true crime with Mike, your host Mike. We are joined here by Anna today, and this is Chad Daybell Part Two. Before I begin, I just want to say we're going to be discussing some sensitive topics, so it's not suitable for all ages. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me again. Um, I just want to, it's been a few minutes or a few days since we talked about this. So I just want to do just a really quick recap of, who the players we met are and kind of what's happened up to this point, just in case somebody comes into this cold and they find episode 2 before they find episode 1, or they just need a refresher. So the main perpetrators in this crime are Lori Vallow Daybell, Chad Daybell, Alex Cox, who is Lori's brother, and the main victims are Tylee Ryan, Lori's daughter, JJ Vallow, Lori's son, Tammy Daybell, who is Chad's wife, and Charles Vallow, who is Lori's husband. Where we left off, Chad and Lori had met in October of 2018, late October of 2018. They had a whirlwind romance. Very quickly, Chad started telling Lori that people in her life were dark spirits and they were possessed by demons, and that the only way to get rid of the demons were to kill the people, to free their souls from the demonic possession. In the timeline that we got through on our other episode, Charles Vallow had been murdered by Alex Cox. Alex claimed it was self-defense. And very quickly after that, we're going to learn that Lori, Alex, her niece Melanie, and the 2 kids, JJ and Tylee, moved to Rexburg, Idaho, which is the next town over from where Chad lives with his wife Tammy and their family. So this is early August in 2019. So not even a year after Chad and Lori have met, have fallen in love, have started building in what, in my opinion, is kind of a crazy religious cult. They have some very fringe beliefs that are loosely based on the Mormon Church, but do not align with Mormon beliefs at all. And I want to keep reiterating that this is not the way that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches their people to behave.
Yeah, that's very good to keep in mind. So
yes,
we'll keep that.
All right, so we are in August. Charles is dead, so Lori is a widow at this point. She still has she still has 3 kids. Colby, her oldest son, is married and out of the house, having babies of his own, so he's not really a problem for her. Speaking of Colby, Lori makes him the only beneficiary of her life insurance policy in August. She removed any mention of JJ or Tylee receiving any benefits upon her death at that point in time. She also
that would play a key role something later in the, like in one or both of the trials. Not trying to skip ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I don't know that it's specifically expounded upon in the trials, but it is just one of the bricks in the wall that is going to build the prison around both of them. At this time, she also transferred, Tylee was receiving survivor benefits for the death of her biological father while she was still a minor. We talked about that in the first episode. And Lori went and transferred those benefits from being direct deposited into an account with Tylee's name on it into a bank account with only Lori's name on it. And this is really where I think the evidence against Lori in all of this really starts to stack up and be kind of indefensible. Up to this point, maybe it was all Chad, maybe it really was self-defense with Charles and Alex, but these moves that she's making now, it really kind of points to premeditation. So this is the part where this story gets really, really sad. Charles's death was sad, but it gets worse. So on September 8th of 2019, Lori and Alex take JJ and Tylee to Yellowstone. This is the last proof of life that anybody has for Tylee. They can see evidence of them being alive at the park. There's pictures and short videos of JJ and Tylee together. They can see, like on car cameras or like traffic cameras, the truck moving around the park. But after they leave the park, there's never any more proof of Tylee being alive. It is still unclear if something happened to Tylee in Yellowstone, but it could have happened after they got back.
Okay. Same with JJ.
JJ's a little bit different. JJ has a little bit longer on this earth. Not much, but this is the end of Tylee's life. Ironically, this is also the day that Chad signed a document with Tammy to up her life insurance amount. And we'll find out later in Chad's trial that unless they were taking out life insurance on Chad, there was no reason for him to sign that document. And they did not take out life insurance on Chad through her workplace employer plan. So I think that was just an oversight on Chad's part. And I'm kind of giving a little bit away, but one of Chad's defenses was that this was just Tammy's decision and he had no influence on it at all. But if he signed the document with her, it was not just her decision. So September 9th, the very next day, phone records put Alex Cox on Chad's property, and location data from that phone puts him in a pretty small radius of the area where Tylee's body is eventually going to be found. That same day, Chad sends a text to his wife, Tammy, explaining in very great detail about how he was out doing yard work and he was going to burn some limb debris. And he saw a big fat raccoon and he went and got his gun and he shot it and he buried it on their property in the pet cemetery. And that's the area that Tylee was found in, was the area that they called the pet cemetery.
Wow, okay.
And this was really out of character for their normal text messages. It was really just logistics between the two of them for text message. You know, I'm headed home, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything from the store? That kind of stuff. Writing several sentences was just not something they did together. And Tammy's reply back to him was just very uninterested. I think it was okay.
If she only knew.
Yeah. So September 22nd, just a couple weeks later, is the last proof of life we have for JJ. Now, Alex and Lori and her niece Melanie are now, and now JJ, are living in Rexburg. Nobody's seen Tylee. When people are asking about Tylee, Lori is lying and saying that she is at BYU, Idaho, taking classes. Tylee was only 16. She was just a few days away from her 17th birthday when she died. But she had already gotten her GED. So she was already a high school graduate at 16. And so it could have made sense that Tylee was taking classes at college, to the people that were asking. So we met Melanie Gibb in the last episode. Melanie has a boyfriend named David Warwick, and they are both still interested in the end of times prepping type of stuff. And so they are at Lori's apartment that evening to record a podcast about that kind of stuff. And the last people to see JJ alive are Melanie and David as they see Alex carrying him into Lori's apartment. He had been watching him in his own apartment. And they describe it as a really tender moment that JJ is asleep on Alex's shoulder as he carries him up the stairs. And that's the last time anybody sees JJ. One of those weird twists of fate coincidences is Melanie and David were staying in Lori's apartment, and David was actually sleeping in JJ's room. JJ was supposedly asleep in Lori's room on like a little pallet on the floor. During the night, David woke up with a terrible, terrible nightmare. Like woke up screaming and, still fighting whatever, was haunting him in his dreams. And Melanie got scared, so she went and tried to wake Lori up to help. And she texted Lori and Chad to ask them to, minister and pray over David. And Lori's door is locked, and neither of them answer the calls. So could be completely innocent, but in the context of everything else, it's pretty suspicious. So that was September 22nd. On September 23rd, Alex's phone is placed by location data within a very small radius on Chad's property in the area that JJ's body is later found. In the morning, when everybody in the apartment wakes up, Melanie and David ask about JJ, and Lori tells them that she had Alex take him away because he was acting like a zombie.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. It's heavy stuff, and I'm purposely not going into details. We don't need all that. If people want to learn more about it, there's plenty of information on the internet. But bottom line, those two sweet, innocent children were sacrificed for selfish reasons within a couple of weeks of each other. And my personal opinion is I think that Tylee had to be the one that they took care of first, because if she were alive, she would never have let anyone hurt her little brother. So they had to get her out of the way first. Okay, so moving on, October 2nd, 2019, Melanie's estranged husband, Brendan Boudreaux, is shot at his brand new home in Arizona. He had moved there, I believe, 5 days before. Very few people knew where he lived. One of the few people that did know was his estranged wife, Melanie, because he had their 5 children with him, and he had to let her know where her children were. The vehicle that the shooter was in was a gray Jeep that looked just like the one that Charles Vallow had helped Tylee buy just a few months earlier. The tire had been taken off of the back of the Jeep, and he saw what he recognized to be like the muzzle of a gun with a silencer on it sticking out of the bottom part of the back window. And they fired, and then the Jeep took off. And Brendan was in the insurance business, and so he had the VIN number to the Jeep because he had given them a quote on insurance for the Jeep when they bought it. So when he called the police and he told them everything that happened, he was like, by the way, I thought I recognized the Jeep. Here's the VIN number of the Jeep I think it is. And this is kind of what starts the law enforcement involvement in the case, is Brendan giving them the VIN number to this Jeep. They were able to get the license plate. Brendan was also able to tell them that Lori and her crew were in Idaho. So The Arizona authorities called the Rexburg police and asked them to conduct surveillance on Lori et al. To kind of, just help them with their investigation. It comes out later that by this time, October 2nd, they never saw any children with any of them. They never saw JJ or Tylee during any of the surveillance that they did. So I think that backs up the dates of death that we are pretty sure we know about. But they're not done with their mayhem. 7 days later, on October 9th, there was an attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell outside of her home. Oh, let me back up to October 2nd. They were able to place Alex in the general area of Brendan Boudreaux's home in Arizona when the shooting happened. So, I mentioned before, Alex has passed away. He will never face charges for this, but they're pretty sure that Alex was basically Chad and Lori's henchman. And because Brandon was not fully supporting Melanie's joining of their cult, he was dark and evil and possessed by demons, and he had to go too. So now we're back on October 9th. Tammy is coming home from a clogging class. She did clogging classes. She did Zumba classes. She was training to run a marathon. She was in her 50s, and she just decided to take charge of her life at that point. I think it's just charming to think about Tammy Daybell learning to clog. So she's getting home. She's getting out of the Dodge Dakota pickup that she was driving, and she saw a man wearing all black with a ski mask standing near the front of her truck, holding a gun, and he didn't say a word. He just stood there, and the description I've seen is almost like he was like pulling the trigger and like pointing it at her several times, but the gun never fired. And so Tammy decided in her mind that it was a paintball gun, and I think that that's probably natural. Because, I mean, who wants to say, oh my gosh, a guy just tried to shoot a rifle at me from 10 feet away in my driveway? So your brain is going to rationalize it. And she rationalized it that it was a hoodlum with a paintball gun. Later that same night, Lori took a phone call in the presence of her friend Zulema, who is also kind of one of the believers and ascribes to their beliefs. And Zulema overheard her say, or heard when Lori hung up, she said to Zulema, that idiot can't do anything right.
Was she referring to Chad and something, or?
I think she was referring to Alex and the fact that he had attempted to shoot people twice in a week and didn't kill either of them. Chad, during the attempted shooting on Tammy, Chad was in the house. So it wasn't Chad. It had to be Alex or the crazy hoodlum with a paintball gun. But what are the odds?
I'll go with the paintball gun.
Especially when 10 days later, on October 19th, which is a Saturday morning, Chad calls 911 to report that Tammy had died in her sleep. Initially, the death was ruled natural causes. Idaho is a coroner state, and coroners they are elected, and they do not have to have any medical training. They get some brief on-the-job training when they're elected, and then there is, continuing education courses and training that they can take. And this coroner did do it, but she was brand new. She'd just been elected. And didn't really know what she was doing. The assistant coroner was a longtime paramedic who also attended, and it was some of her observations that we later got that kind of helped guide this is a suspicious death direction. that they ended up going on. But at this point in time, it's ruled natural causes. Chad tells the first responders that she was feeling unwell the night before, that she had a major coughing fit that made her throw up, that she got up and she vomited and went back to bed. And the next morning, he pulled the sheets and he heard a thunk, and Tammy was on the ground with one foot still on the bed. Now, there's some things wrong with that story. Just hearing it initially, because dead bodies don't roll.
No, but I mean, I guess I mean, if you're on the bed and you lift up, the bed's gonna move. I mean, she might be on a bad position and fall
I
off.
mean, I think it was valid in the absence of any other evidence that this small town police department, Rexburg, Idaho, is not huge. They don't get a lot of murders. I think it was valid that they were like, okay, we don't see any overt evidence of anything untoward, so they ruled it natural causes. The coroner, because she was ruling it natural causes, gave the family the option if they wanted an autopsy or not, and they said absolutely not, no autopsy. Chad called a friend of his who was a funeral director in Springville, Utah, where they used to live, and had him come and get Tammy that same day because he wanted her buried in Utah to be close to her family. Which,
well, I mean, I guess that's nice of him. I guess
if you're being charitable, then that sounds great. But Chad, like a lot of people who practice the Mormon faith, was very into genealogy, and tombstones and headstones are very important in a genealogical search. He insisted that his name not be on Tammy's tombstone. So if anybody finds her tombstone and goes looking, it's not going to immediately tie her to him, which is a little suspicious.
Yes.
So she is pronounced dead on October 19th. She is buried in Utah on October 22nd. They held a memorial service back in Rexburg, Idaho on October 23rd, where Chad acted very weird and said some things that a lot of people thought were inappropriate for a grieving spouse. It was more of a sermon than a eulogy to his dead wife of, I believe they were married 19 years, mother of his 5 kids. And I remember reading something about even the choice of song he had them play at this memorial service was all about like working and toiling and living, your life in that way for the Lord. And it was very much not a funeral type song. So a lot of people at this point are like looking sideways at Chad about this whole thing. And they were all willing to believe that Tammy died of natural causes. They thought it was a little weird because she was young. She was in her 50s. She was healthy. She was training for a marathon. She was taking Zumba. She was doing these high intensity workout regimens. The people that she worked with talked about how she wore tennis shoes to work every day, no matter, even if she was wearing a dress, because she wanted to get her steps in. So it was hard for them to understand that she just suddenly died in her sleep. But, sometimes that happens. So we are on October 22nd, 2019. This is about a week shy of the 1-year anniversary of Chad and Lori meeting. Remember, that was October 28th of 2018.
Okay.
On October 26th of 2019, Chad begins telling people about Lori and his plans to marry her. Tammy had been dead a week. Um, and, people are asking about Lori, and the stories kind of all varied, but in every story where it was asked if she had children, Lori had no living children. She still had at least one living child. She still had Colby, but nobody knows about JJ and Tylee at this point. On November 5th of 2019, Lori and Chad get married in Hawaii. So, Charles has been dead since July. JJ and Tylee went missing in September. Tammy was disposed of in October. And roughly 2 weeks later, they're married.
Yep, not suspicious at all.
No, it's totally normal, natural behavior.
Don't invite the kids to the new wedding.
Yeah, and there was no evidence of the kids in Hawaii. There were no flight receipts for tickets for them. They're not in any of the pictures, and there were a lot of pictures. They spared really no expense for their private beach wedding ceremony.
I guess where did they get the money? Like, where did they get the money for that? Maybe one of the life insurance policies?
Well, Lori had gotten some money from Joe Ryan. I believe that it was probably gone by then, but Charles made okay money as a financial advisor. And so there might have been some left over from that. But keep in mind, Lori is getting roughly $4,000 a month in benefits for JJ. Half of it was his survivor benefits, and the other half of it was her benefits for caring for the minor. And now she's getting Tylee's roughly $2,000 a month survivor benefits deposited into her bank account. And so it's not easy in 2024 to live a lavish lifestyle on $6,000, but
it's a pretty normal kind of a salary. So
yeah, and then we don't know how much money Chad had, but Tammy had almost $400,000 in life insurance, and he filed to claim it right away. So at the very least, they're just living on credit because they know they've got a windfall coming as soon as he gets that life insurance money to pay the credit off. So November is the month when Kay Woodcock starts sounding the alarm with the authorities because she hasn't heard from JJ since August. And that was just a very short FaceTime call that was out of character for JJ. JJ was a little boy who loved electronics and technology, and he had his own iPad. So he would FaceTime people, and he wouldn't actually hold it up to his face. He would literally hold it in his hand and walk around talking to them or showing them things. And so they're seeing ceilings in every place that he lives, or like his nose. But in this FaceTime call, the last one that Kay had with him was less than a minute long. And it wasn't JJ holding the iPad. It was somebody holding the iPad up for JJ to talk. And she said it just wasn't natural. It just didn't feel like JJ. And so, she gets that call, and then she's messaging Lori. She's emailing Lori. She's trying to call Lori, but Lori keeps changing her phone number. And she's just not getting any answers from Lori on where JJ is. And she's getting put off, and Lori's just saying how busy they are and just making excuses for why Kay can't talk to him. And so she finally reaches out to law enforcement. She reaches out to law enforcement in Arizona, which is the last place she knew that they were. And they say, oh, well, no, they're in Idaho. So we'll have the people that we know in Idaho check on him. So the first welfare check for JJ is done at Lori's apartment in Rexburg on November 26, 2019. And then if your viewers want to go and find it, there is body cam footage of this. And Lori just seems so very fake. Like, she's trying too hard to sound nonchalant, in my opinion. She tells the police that JJ is with her friend in Arizona. And then Chad calls Melanie and says, hey, if the Rexburg police call you, don't answer the phone. And then later, Lori calls her and texts her, messages her somehow, and says, hey, go take pictures of random kids at the movie theater or the playground and send them to me so I can show them to the cops and prove that JJ was with you.
Oh, my God.
And so Melanie, at first, she does lie for her friend. She doesn't know what's going on. And so she just says, okay. And she just trusts, because up to this point, everybody still thinks that Lori is a devoted, loving mother. So Melanie trusts that it's all going to work out. And so she does lie. And she tells the cops that JJ was with her, but she sent him back to Lori. So November 27th, the very next day, the Rexburg police got a search warrant for Lori's apartment to look for the kids. When I misspoke earlier when I said that they had abandoned the apartment, this is the point when they abandoned the apartment. But yeah, they said it looked like that they had all just packed the few things they needed and moved out in a hurry. There were still clothes in the closet, stuff on the counters, but just no sign of Melanie, Alex, or Lori. But there was a printed bill from a storage facility on the printer in plain sight in this apartment in Lori's name. And so that's a very important piece of evidence later on. So around this time, Chad takes his kids on a vacation to Knott's Berry Farm in California. It's basically the week between Thanksgiving and Christmas that he takes all 5 of his kids there. These are grown kids. I think that the youngest one was 18 or 19 years old. When the attempt was made on Tammy's life on October 19th, he was away on his mission trip. So I think that means he had to be at least 17 or 18. Lori joins Chad and his children in California a month and a half after their mother dies. And I don't think they told the kids at this point that they were married, which is kind of on brand. And then on December 1st, when everybody leaves California, Chad and Lori fly to Hawaii again with no kids with them. Chad had sent an email to a rental property in Hawaii saying that he and his wife were looking for a place to rent. They were a clean couple with no kids. December 6th is when Melanie called the Rexburg police and told them that she had lied about having JJ, that she never had them, that she didn't know where he was. And, she was just really uncomfortable with it. She, after talking to the police, decided on her own. The police and Melanie say that they never asked her to do this, but she called and recorded the call where she called Lori and Chad and basically was like, if you were my real friend, you wouldn't ask me to lie to the police. What's going on? Where are the kids? And Lori and Chad are pushing her off and saying that the kids are fine, that they're safe and happy.
But no information of where they were.
No.
No.
And she says that it's, for the kids' safety and for Melanie's safety and for everybody's safety, that nobody needs to know where the kids are. December 11th is when, so not even 2 months after she dies, the Fremont County Sheriff. So Rexburg is in Ada County, and Sugar Salem, where Chad and Tammy actually lived, was in Fremont County. So Fremont County Sheriff's Office starts, basically because of all of this, starts reinvestigating Tammy's death and decide that it's a little bit suspicious. So they get an order to exhume her body in Utah. And Utah is a medical examiner state. So you have a trained, licensed pathologist doing this examination. And they would eventually rule her death a homicide.
What did they find?
They ruled that she died by asphyxiation. And this is one of those pathologists that will look at the totality of the evidence surrounding it. They're not just the medical facts type. And so they reviewed all of the details and everything that was making Fremont County suspicious enough to ask for this. They couldn't find any. Death by asphyxiation is often a ruling when you rule out everything else, and that you can't find any proof that the heart stopped for some other reason. There's no visible injuries to the body, no gunshots, no stab wounds, no visible strangulation. Just basically something cut off their air that caused their death. But one of the things they did find were bruises on Tammy's arms that could have been caused by her being held down.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
I think it's pretty horrifying to just imagine the ways that she might have died. And it's still a really big question whether Chad did it himself.
Or was it Alex?
Or Alex came to help. Alex was in the area of Chad's property. I don't know if it was dumb luck or he finally got a little bit smarter, but his phone was placed in the parking lot of a church a couple of miles away from Chad's house. But it stayed there for a little bit of time. So I don't know if he was smart enough to leave his phone in the truck or just forgot it, but it's conceivable that Alex was there when Tammy died too. So Tammy is exhumed on December 11th. The family basically Chad and Lori and everybody finds out on December 12th. They call Alex to let him know that Tammy has been exhumed. And that is the day that Alex dies of a pulmonary embolism in Arizona.
Is that one believed to be true? Like that was a natural cause?
Yes. They've looked at it multiple times based on all the research that I did and everything I've heard. They're pretty sure that it was just a pulmonary embolism and it wasn't caused at the hand of another. But Alex liked to go over the border to Mexico for recreation. I think it's rumored that he was a bit of a sex addict, and so he would use sex workers in Mexico. But also there's some speculation that he might have gotten some drugs over there that either were bad and caused the pulmonary embolism, or he might have known, and finding out that they'd exhumed Tammy's body. So it could have been that Alex did something to hasten his own death in some way. It's really unclear. We'll probably never know. But as far as provable, they can't prove anything other than a natural death. And pulmonary embolism is something that runs in his family. So it's entirely plausible. He was a truck driver for a large part of his adult life. I don't think he took care of his health the best he could have. So it's entirely possible.
Okay. No.
Um, but here's what makes it just a little questionable. Um, he had, within the month before, married Zulema, Lori's friend that I mentioned a couple months back in the timeline. Um, and he had told her after he found out that they exhumed Tammy, I think they're going to make me their fall guy. So that's what makes me wonder. Either he just got super stressed and it made his heart shut down, or his body, react poorly, or he could have taken his own life because he saw what was coming.
Well, but either way, I guess it is what it is. I mean, it's not like I guess Lori and Chad did not murder him. So,
No.
but,
And I think what's just especially heinous about this is I don't think Tammy is a little suspicious. Chad might have at least played a part in it, if not did it by himself. But there's really no proof that they actually did the murdering of anyone in this case. They just directed everyone to do it for them. And to me, that's almost worse in a way.
well, they're all bad. I guess maybe that's the whole problem. I guess we'll talk more when it gets to the trial of how hard the trial was because
Yeah.
there was no DNA, or probably there was no fingerprints, no DNA. It was just more, as they say, the circumstantial that the bodies ended up on his property and he was conveniently away during
Mm-hmm.
these things and never talked about it. He never asked Lori, like, hey, where's your kids?
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that, and I'll try to go into as much of that detail as possible. But the only direct evidence that they have on either of them um, is that there was a hair found with JJ's body that was Lori's, but that could have just been incidental as well. So that wouldn't have been proof enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few more months to get through in this episode, and a lot of stuff starts happening at this point, as if a lot of stuff hadn't already happened. But so December 20th is the first I could find where there was a public announcement by Rexburg Police that JJ and Tylee were missing. They knew at this point that there was another child, that Tylee was supposed to be in the home and wasn't. So they announced publicly on December 20th that JJ and Tylee are missing, and then they turned around the very next day in a really unprecedented move and shared with the public that Chad and Lori were persons of interest in the disappearance of the kids. Uh,
That doesn't normally happen that quickly.
uh-uh. January 3rd of 2020, police serve a search warrant on Chad's home, on the interior of the home. They took out a whole bunch of electronics and other stuff. I don't believe that anything that, other than some of the electronics with maybe some text messages and emails and stuff, not a lot of stuff that they found on that first search really moved the investigation forward. But it's pretty clear that they are honing in on Chad and Lori at this point. January 7th of 2020, Kay and Larry Woodcock fly to Rexburg, Idaho, and have a press conference where they announce a $20,000 reward for information on the kids. January 10th, Chad's brother, Matt Daybell, makes a public plea through the media for Chad to cooperate with the police. And he tells the media that Chad's kind of estranged from some of his family because of his extreme religious beliefs and the way he's been acting, for the last couple of years, but especially since Tammy's death. January 25th of 2020, Lori is served in Hawaii with an order to produce the kids within 5 days. Of course, she doesn't do it because she can't do it.
Yeah.
On February 20th. And so we can circle back around to this when we talk about the trial and the aftermath. But when she didn't produce the kids, Rob Wood, who is the Ada County prosecutor, was just like, what do we do now? We don't have any proof. We don't have any bodies. We don't have any proof that anything has happened to them. And he dug through the Idaho criminal code, and he found a charge that was basically child abandonment, but a little bit different in scope. That was really originally or mostly used for like in child support and child custody cases when one parent is not doing what they're supposed to according to the court order. But the way the law was written, it fit this situation perfectly. So they were able to get an arrest warrant for Lori based on that law. And so February 20th, some of the Idaho people fly to Hawaii and assist Hawaii police on arresting Lori. And she is
And then it ends up on a Hawaii Five-0 episode.
I mean, if we still had that show, I'm sure it would. And so she's held on a $5 million warrant related to the missing kids. Hold on. You're going to have to edit this out. I touched my earbuds and it started a podcast playing in my ears.
Oh, I can't hear it, but yeah.
Well, that's good. Okay. All right, moving on. So February 20th, she waives extradition. She attempted multiple times to get her $5 million bail reduced. And when they wouldn't reduce it, she just finally waived extradition and went back to waived extradition back to Idaho. And March 5th is when she came back and she made her first court appearance on March 6th. And they reduce her bail at that point to $1 million, but she still can't make bail. Sometime after this, Chad is actually going to people that he went to church with and asking them to like put their house up as collateral for Lori's bail.
Wow. Okay.
Of course they say no, because why would you? But I mean, just the gall of feeling like you have the right to ask somebody that is just mind-boggling. So April 9th, prosecutors announced publicly that Lori and Chad are being investigated for the murder of the kids. So this is the first time that law enforcement is saying, we think the kids were killed and we think these two did it. And then a month later, at 7 a.m., the Rexburg police, the Fremont County sheriffs, and the FBI arrived at Chad's property with a search warrant. And within a few hours, they uncovered the body of JJ in a shallow grave. And then just shortly after that, they uncovered what was left of Tylee.
Wow.
JJ was buried whole. His hands and feet were wrapped in duct tape. He had a piece of plastic over his head and duct tape wrapped around it. And he was strangled or asphyxiated to death. Nobody can say for sure how Tylee died because she was found in pieces. They never recovered all of the pieces that would have made Tylee. And it was all burned and buried. And those two facts right there are 100% why I am okay with the outcome of these two trials that we'll talk about later. Because that is just unconscionable. Yes. To do that to those two children. And that's as far into the details of how they died as I intend to go on this podcast. I think that is more than enough. The information is out there for anybody that wants to know more. So while the police were searching, Chad called Lori at the jail to tell her that they were searching. And you can hear this phone call, and it's just weird. She says, "Are they looking in the house?" And he says, "No, on the property." And she says, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I'm feeling okay," or "I'm not feeling very nervous," or "I'm pretty calm." And then she says, "What can I do for you?" And that part always just kind of struck me because I'm like, you're in jail. You can't do anything for him.
Yeah.
At the end of the call, he tells her to call her attorney. He then goes and transfers $8,000 each to three of his 5 kids. And around 11:30 a.m., he had moved from his car in his driveway to his daughter Emma's house, which is kind of catty corner across the street. And around 11:30, he is seen leaving his daughter's house at what is described a high rate of speed by the police officers, and they chased him down and they arrested him at that point. And there is a wacky and wild police car video between him and his daughter Emma while he is being detained, while they are still conducting the search, that we'll talk about more in Chad's trial, but it raises a lot of questions about how much his kids know, how much they're not willing to admit. It's just kind of wild. And we're getting close to the end of this episode. I just kind of want to get to the arrest and all of that, or through the arrest and all of that. And then we'll talk about, and the charges. And then in the next episode, we'll talk about Lori's trial and Chad's trial and what's coming up for both of them.
Okay.
So June 10th, the next day, Chad makes his first court appearance and his bail is set at $1 million. Through the rest of 2020, their charges are updated, which is completely common in criminal cases. They officially plead not guilty to the charges. And Rob Wood files the motion that he wants to combine the trials and try them together. And that's going to become, kind of a point of contention throughout the rest of this time. On June 8th of 2021, Lori is deemed not fit for trial. Her mental competency is in question, and she is remanded to a state hospital for her competency to be restored. On June 24th of 21, she's indicted in Arizona for Charles's murder. She's named as a co-conspirator. Alex Cox is named as her co-conspirator in that. Chad is not charged in Charles's murder. On August 5th of 21, the prosecutors announced that they're going to seek the death penalty against Chad. On August 11th, Lori is deemed restored to competency, and she can now participate in her defense again. I said August, I meant April. April 11th of 2021.
Okay.
I think where I said August wrong was the death penalty against Chad. I think that was April 5th. All right, so April 11th, Lori is mentally competent again. May 2nd, prosecutors announced that they're going to seek the death penalty for Lori. October 6th, there's legal wrangling that goes on, but it just was just back and forth. On October 6th, Lori is once again considered incompetent to assist in her defense. And so all of her proceedings are put on hold. And then, they go back and forth. She's eventually, her competency is restored and all of that. March 2nd of 2023 is the next thing that is kind of noteworthy. This is when the trials are officially severed by Judge Stephen Boyce, who will see both of these through to the finish line, and he is an amazing judge. So there was some late discovered evidence, DNA type evidence, and Lori has demanded a speedy trial, and she's not giving up that right. And so Judge Boyce rules that because her attorneys don't have time to have the DNA evidence examined properly before her speedy trial date, his concession to them is that he's going to take the death penalty off the table. So Lori is now being tried separately, and she will not face the death penalty. Chad's defense team, on the other hand, who have been the ones pushing to have the trials separated this whole time, they're given extra time so that they can have the evidence examined before his trial. So that's how we got to Chad and Lori being tried separately for these crimes. And we are caught up. We are caught up to April 3rd of 2023 when Lori's trial officially starts with the jury selection. So in the next episode, we will go through Lori's trial, some more charges. We'll go through Chad's trial, just kind of like some of the crazy things that happened. And then we can talk some more about like some of the jurors from both trials have given interviews. And I can tell you some of the things they said about, the trials and the way they felt about the evidence that was being presented and the attorneys, and just really get into the legal nerdy stuff in the next episode.
Or it may take two. We'll have to see. But yeah, so thank you very much for giving that summary and catching everybody and catching me up. So yeah, I didn't follow it too much. So thank you for getting where we are. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for this one. Thank you for listening to an episode of The Roundup. Be safe out there, and remember, don't do anything bad that will end up on one of my episodes.